And I would also like to echo Senator Coffey's acknowledgement of Simon Brooks' work with regards to approved housing bodies and in the housing sector in general. I'd like to call him a friend, and I'd like to send condolences to his family on his untimely passing. And just returning to the bill, I wish to broadly welcome this housing bill introducing regulation of approved housing bodies. And I speak as a current member of the Joint Oireachtas Housing Committee, a former Chief Executive of Cork Salmon Community, which was itself an approved housing body, and indeed a former member of the Irish Council for Social Housing for many years, which I know was very constructive in the drafting of this legislation. I welcome the bill because we need activist, well-run, approved housing bodies if we are to tackle the housing crisis in Ireland today, including the 3,800 children who are living in emergency accommodation. So approved housing bodies have an important role to play in turning that around so that no child in Ireland should have to be without a roof. I wish to acknowledge that a significant number of issues identified with the bill have been dealt with through the Dáil Committee and report stages, and indeed previously through the examination by the Housing Committee. These issues included my own concerns about proportionate regulation for very small approved housing bodies with voluntary boards, often providing small-scale, though much-needed, special needs housing in rural areas and communities, including, for example, the senior citizens' housing in my hometown in Macroom. We don't want to squeeze out such small-scale providers and small-scale approved housing bodies with overly bureaucratic regulation or duplicatory regulation. And, Minister, I was glad to hear that there will be a memo of understanding between others like HICWA, like the Charity Commission, like the Residential Tenancies Board, because if you're, in a little, you might have 8 or 10 houses and you're a voluntary housing board, you don't want to be drowned in unnecessary. Obviously, there is necessary bureaucracy, and I think they are very much part of the effort to address housing, and they've got and such small approved housing bodies have made a big contribution, particularly around special needs housing. Issues like relating to finance, reporting, functions including control, overshadowing directors and governance, to a large extent, I believe, have been addressed. I note that the members of the Regulatory Authority should come through the Public Appointments Service. This transparency is important and welcome. And whilst a compromise approach has been taken relating to the categorisation of special needs housing, and that different accommodation needs of different categories of tenants is now included in Section 38 under Standards, this recognition of different accommodation needs is welcome. However, I suggest further progress on defining special accommodation needs in housing is returned to, perhaps through future legislation on housing needs assessment and support. I've proposed a few minor amendments too, which I hope you will accept, Minister. These are that in the preparation of strategy statements that there is sector agreement with the approved housing bodies, and that should be part of the strategy preparation to ensure full consultation with the key parties. We wouldn't want the regulator going off and developing a strategy without talking to the very groups that regulator is regulating, and that publication of an interim report may be damaging to individuals without recourse to the full due process of a finalised investigation. So why not just have a publication of a report without a possibly unfairly damaging interim report? I have one question, and I think you've answered it somewhat, but I would need your reassurances. What protections will tenants have if the regulator refuses to register or cancels the registration of the approved housing bodies, and who in law will be that tenant's landlord in that event? So to conclude, I broadly support the bill, and I hope the Minister takes on board my feedback, my minor amendments, and if the Minister, you could offer some clarity about tenants' status in the event of a refusal of registration.